Hey guys, thanks for joining me. I'm just going to take a few minutes of your time to describe the window of tolerance, which is one of the most transformative and powerful practices that you can use every single day. So this comes from a book called Mindsight by Daniel Siegel. And what he describes is, first of all, the window of tolerance, which is your most optimal state. This is where life's ups and downs continue to happen, but you're in a grounded and receptive and open state so that you can move through the ups and downs without flipping your lid, losing your mind, becoming stressed, overly stressed, or depleted. So what we want is an expansive window of tolerance. And what you'll find is that in some areas of your life, you have a very expansive window of tolerance, perhaps at work or with certain friends or when you're on vacation. And then there's other areas of your life where your window of tolerance is much smaller. And when you have a very small window of tolerance, you're perceiving danger all around you at all times, whether you are conscious of this or not. This is the way that your system is reacting. So it could be with family, or again with certain friends, or an environment where you're triggered really easily. That's a signal that your window of tolerance is really small. So some other words that are often used to understand the window of tolerance are like the flow state or peak state, or again your optimal state. So this is really where we want to be operating more and more on a daily basis because it feels good and you have a lot of energy to use. Now what we have here is on the top is hyper arousal. And most of you, I'm sure, have actually heard of hyper arousal as in the fight or flight response. So this is when we're feeling very anxious, overwhelmed, jumpy, alert, activated, where we just, our thoughts are spinning. It's hard to follow one thought to the next. So it's classic overwhelm, classic stress response. Okay, but what we also have on the other end is hypo arousal. And this is the game changer. At least it was for me. For a long time, I thought that I was just a very intense introvert. But when I had language to understand what actually was going on in my body, I realized I have a pattern of hypo arousal. Hypo arousal is shut down. It can feel like you're lazy or lethargic. Suddenly you don't care about things that you actually do care about. You lose a lot of energy. There can be a sense of disembodiment where you lack feeling in your body. You don't even feel like you're really in your body. There's a lack of motivation and can feel very depressing. That's hypo arousal. Okay, so for most of us, we have a pattern where maybe we jump up into hyper, overwhelm, anxious, and if we can't calm it down, we then dive into hypo arousal. But there are people who might just stay up in hyperarousal all the time. And there could be people who would just drop immediately into hypoarousal and stay there. So what's really amazing about understanding the language here is that we can check in with ourselves. And instead of judging or feeling like you're broken or something's wrong with you, if you can just look at the spectrum, say 1 is hypoarousal, on the other end 10 is hyperarousal, right in the middle between 4 to 6, call that the window of tolerance. So every morning when you wake up, you sit down, you close your eyes, you focus on your breath, you can check in with yourself. Where am I on the spectrum between hypo and hyper? And as soon as you have that awareness, you then have access to tools of how to get yourself back into the window of tolerance. So there's different things in terms of breath and movement or questions you can ask yourself that will bring you back into that window. And the more we do that, the wider the window becomes and the quicker we'll catch ourselves when we are in hyper or hypo, so that it doesn't become this prolonged feeling that becomes a mood for several days or a temperament that is stuck in your body or eventually a personality trait because it's something that you don't understand how to let go or learn from or grow from. So who you are at your core is neutral. These emotional roller coasters that we go on, if we don't understand how to shift away from the really intense ones, they can take over. But when you understand your system and the language you can use, you can actually bring yourself back into that state where you're calm and you're receptive.